Hi, I'm Kim Bracken. I currently live here in St. Petersburg. I'll go backwards in my career. I was the head women's coach at the University of Texas. Before that, I was the assistant all the way up to the head women's coach at Auburn University, and started my career at Davidson College and Northwestern. And I was not a great swimmer. I was a Division III swimmer. I loved the sport. I loved the enthusiasm from the coaches that I was fortunate enough to mentee with. I think we were asked to give a turning point story, and I guess I'll just give mine right now. My turning point story in helping me to stay in this sport and to hopefully be a role model for current young female coaches today. I was coaching at Northwestern, loved my job. Who would not love living in Chicago? It was sort of a dream come true. Loved working with Jimmy Tierney. And David Marsh called me up and said, hey, I saw you on deck at NCAAs and I loved your energy. We're looking to bring in a female to help our women's team. Not the men, just the women's team. And I was like, well, where is this? Auburn, Alabama. I'm like, no. Why would I ever move to Auburn, Alabama? The men had just won their first national title. And I said no probably 3 times. And then finally, Bob Groseth said, you should at least go listen. And I did. I went down and I took a trip, and I saw that there was a different trajectory I could take in coaching. Again, I loved my experience at Northwestern, but we were not looking to win a national championship. And the idea that I could go into a program that had already proven they could be successful and mentor a group of women, when somebody was asking me, I just want you to take these women and do what you can with them. I think we believe in you. That was really appealing to me. And that was my turning point. And from there on, it was an incredible trajectory in my coaching career. I went on to coach at 5 Olympic Games and Olympic medalists and world champions. And I don't know that I would have had that same experience had I stayed where I was. So I feel like taking a risk, becoming uncomfortable, taking on new challenges when there are people there who support you and will give you that opportunity. I think that's something I would encourage everyone to do, and that's what I tell people that I'm, helping to mentor.
I'm Kathleen Prindle. I own a club team in South Florida. We are in our 12th year. I have been coaching for 30 years. I am very involved in the governance of our sport, so I've past vice president of the ASCA, currently serve on the USA Swimming Board of Directors, and active in my LSC board. I'm the finance vice chair of our LSC board. And I'm telling you that because it's relevant to my personal experience. Before I go on, though, I want to, just since this is a women in coaching panel, I just wanted to quickly say hello and recognize Miss Maureen Sheehan for being here, and we're so grateful for everything that you've done in the sport. So thank you, and we're here to honor her this weekend, so more of that to come, but thanks. Okay, so do I have to talk about my...
Yeah, why not?
All right. Okay, so there are so many. I think for me, I have to say that as a female in coaching, I have been supported and encouraged by a lot of people, most of them men, some of them in this room. And without that encouragement, I don't know that I would have had the confidence to take my own career where I needed it to go. So there's those, I guess, allies that I'm really grateful for. One of them was a coach, one of my biggest mentors who's now passed away, but his name was Michael Loberg. And my first experience with high performance swimming, I guess you could call it, was at my first Olympic trials, which was 2008. And I was an assistant then, and I was with a swim club in South Florida called Coral Springs Swim Club. And I was the only female on the staff, and my job was to, among other things, my job was to put Dara Torres's tech suit on her before her races, back in the days of the full body tech suit. And although it was, really fun to watch an elite sprinter like that make an Olympic team at the age of 41, putting on her tech suit was not that fun. And I thought that there's got to be more to coaching than this. But at that same meet, my coach, Michael Loberg at the time, again, mentors and allies that I didn't even know that I had. For those of you in the room, you know this, if you have an athlete make an Olympic team, you start having meetings immediately, and we talk about strategy and medals and what are we going to do and how are we going to train them at the training camp and all this stuff. And Michael turned to me and said, I don't feel like going, I'm bored, this is boring, which it's totally not boring, but he was sort of pushing me, and he said, I need you to go in my stead. And I went, yeah, but I've been an assistant with this process. I haven't been in charge of this process, so they're going to ask me questions I don't know the answer. And he goes, that's bullshit, just make it up. So, which is not exactly what is my style, but I got an opportunity to sit in these strategy meetings and talk about what are we doing in the 50 and what are we doing in the 100 and how are we going to do this and all of these things. And people, I remember sitting and people turned to me and said, okay, well, so how did you train Dara Torres? Like, I don't know, I just gave the workout that I was written. But the turning point for me was realizing that there were people that believed in me enough to put me in that room with those people making that decision. And it built the confidence that I think I needed later. I will keep talking for just another second, because I have two turning point, I guess we're giving our turning point story. So another one was getting fired. A coach long ago said to me, you're not a good coach unless you've gotten fired at least once. So I cling to that, but I was fired by a coach who, gender is irrelevant, but that person happened to be male, who was a little bit, I believe, threatened by the abilities that I was showing. But it turned out to be another watershed sort of moment, because if I wanted to coach the athletes that I wanted to coach, which are 13 and older, and I wasn't going to be in the college arena, I was going to be in the club arena, then I needed to build something of my own. And so I think I'd have to say that getting fired as a female and then looking for opportunities to work with elite athletes in my local area, I had to create an opportunity for myself. So the person that fired me, we're now good friends, and I've thanked him many times for doing that, because I don't think he intended to do me a favor at all. I think the opposite was the intent, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened. So
I'm Abby Fish. I gave a talk yesterday on the dolphin kick, and I realized in the midst of the beginning of that talk, my anxiety through the roof. I totally did not go into my history or background or why I was standing up there giving that talk. I did say I swam at the University of Georgia, which was like the pinnacle of my career. I was there from 2008 to 2012, and I continued post-grad training until about 2015 or so. Since then, I've started coaching. I've been in an array of different coaching jobs on many different facets with many different styles of athletes. And for me, my personal career and like what my goals are more into the high performance realm. But obviously breaking into that, being a young female coach and finding opportunities to work specifically within that kind of goes a little bit in with what Kathleen was saying. I've had to create some opportunities. I launched my own business, but at the same time, I know that I don't know everything. And so I've had a lot of great mentors through the way, have taught me a lot of really awesome things and different ways to think about the sport that I've been really, really thankful for. My very first coaching job out of school was at Nashville Aquatic Club. I was their quote-unquote technology coordinator, which was a really fancy job title for someone who was doing a lot of different things, and some of that included video analysis. From there, I went to the race club, and I worked down there for about 1.5 years with Gary. And then I worked online for Ritter Sports Performance, has been coaching club, and now I'm still coaching club while running my own business. So as far as like a turning point story for me, I feel very intimidated still being a young female coach. I know I get up and speak at a lot of different conferences and stuff as well, but one of the major things for me to have the confidence to be able to do that is to have been around and see other female coaches, like Kim recruited me when she was at Texas, who have kind of done the thing. And so I look to them for that confidence because they've been there and they know, to kind of be able to help mold me into understanding that I can become that. that. But at the same token, for me, when I look at my own swimming career, the first prominent female coach I had in my corner was Carol Capitani. And actually, Carol recruited me at UGA, and then she signed with, I believe it was Singapore, for 2 years, and so she was gone. And so I was once again with the staff of 5 male coaches, which I always swam well under male coaches, but at the same token, it was different thinking. I was like, oh, I'm going to have this female aspect in college, and then I got to college, and Carol was gone for 2 years. So ironically, our weight coach at UGA, she is still there, played a very big role in helping me just kind of, increase my confidence, also increase my strength, and just have a better overall mental attitude towards swimming. If you know Jack Bowerly, he is a pretty hard trainer. We did a lot of the grind in college, but she was kind of that nice weight where you could kind of release some emotions in the weight room, and you can talk through some things in a different way than maybe I could with my male coaches. So for me, the turning point hasn't necessarily been a specific time, but it's been around and being around a lot of great females, like mentored by Lindsay Manteco right when I went to USA Swimming after college, and seeing Lindsay, being Lindsay at USA Swimming. I was like, oh wow, how do you become that? How do you be her? How do I embody her? How can I act like her? Because essentially, I want to do as much as I can for the sport of swimming, because I love the sport of swimming so much that I want to model all these women that I'm up here with.
I'm Ina Harizanova, and I'm a clinical psychologist. My background, yes? Oh, okay. My background is in various sports. I was a swimmer for 12, 13 years when I was younger, before switching to modern pentathlon, which I did for about 10 years. I got a couple medals from World Cups in the 90s, a long time ago. And then when I came here, I had the opportunity to coach Division I swimming team in Chicago, and switched for various reasons into different sports, which was the right decision for me in terms of being able to work with athletes and see them grow as individuals, as human beings, as persons, which was not the emphasis in the program, or that's how it felt to me. So turning points, many role models, many male and female role models, more male than female, unfortunately. So my hope would be for little girls, young women, to have more female role models in the sports arena. Growing up, I could remember my first role model, my female PE teacher. I was a straight A student, but this is a woman that, I still remember her. She was very dignified, and she was very strict, but all students did anything for her. She was also very understanding and ready to listen if you need her. Later on, I had a lot of support, which I'm very grateful for, with various male coaches. There was no really female coaches in pentathlon. I'm from Bulgaria, and coming here very quickly, I was able to get involved in swimming, which is how I started in sports, and my undergrad is in PE teaching and swimming coaching. And so I had tremendous 9-10 years at the school that I coached as an assistant, and I had the last 3-4 years I was the coach of the sprint group, which was amazing. Turning point for me there was when I asked for a raise. Having written a letter with the statistical analysis in terms of times, in terms of points contributing to the team, etc. And so that was not well accepted. In fact, I had a very negative experience behind closed doors, which I just lasted another year after that. But I'm grateful for that, because it showed me that the program doesn't necessarily want to go towards NCAA, doesn't want to go to a higher level of performance while you care for the person. And so I thank God, fencing was already kind of in the works for me, and so I just made a turn towards fencing, and I at the same time I had to do my practicum, and just the daytime job was not in the cards for me at the time. But I wish that things were different. I did not necessarily want to move to a different city, and so having the pentathlon background and having fencing as an opportunity that kept me in Chicago was something that was very, very easy decision for me. And as I was preparing and working with kids in fencing, I pursued my degree in psychology, and I was very lucky to have other mentors and role models there, and Dr. Gloria Balaguer was my mentor for several years, and I looked up to her in that regard, in the building relationship with the athlete and with the coaches as a main factor is one of the main factors in high-level performance. And then I connected with Dr. Heil at several conferences, and we kind of kept in touch, and I'm thankful for his support throughout the years. And so I'm very excited to be here and to be on this awesome panel with so many accomplished women that I could learn from.
She also has her own fencing club. I think you forgot to mention that. So you pursued your professional.
Yeah, I think that I am able to, and I'm grateful to have that. I work for a non-for-profit fencing club. That I'm very independent of anyone in anything, and I am able to pursue the person development in addition to the athletic development, the personal development, in addition to athletic development. And so that, to me, this is the greatest pride to see the child that's, came at 9, 10, 11 years old, to see them graduate and then go to college and then come back. And last year I had a person who competed in Kazan at the Olympic trials for the United States. So that was unbelievable to see. And he graduated with his PhD just this last fall. So we could have it all.
Okay, so last night I was looking a little bit. You all know, I'm sure, USA Swimming puts out their demographics report for the year prior, and it's always an interesting read. It's always interesting to see what sort of information is quantified and what sort of information isn't quantified, honestly. But of course I looked, because we were getting ready to do this, I looked at the percentage of female coaches versus male coaches, and it's the percentage on paper looks pretty good. I brought my iPad up here so I could remember, but it's okay. It's like 52% female coaches to whatever male coaches. Sounds good, right? Sounds great. But what wasn't quantified, and it's a little harder, the data's a little harder to mine, is how many female coaches are in leadership roles, how many female coaches are head coaches or associate head coaches, or have a voice in their governance or whatever. So that percentage last time I checked for a panel I did a few years ago was 20%. So the percentage of female head coaches across the board, so we're talking NCAA, we're talking USA Swimming, we're talking Rec League Swimming, is 20% at the high end. So it's really more like 18. And I cannot say what it was this past year because I don't have that data. However, in the prior decade, every year that percentage has remained the same. So it's great, and I'm thrilled that we have sort of an equal representation of gender in our sport. I just wonder what could be done to sort of, I'd love to see the percentage of people in leadership roles also be sort of 50-50. I don't know if you have any ideas, thoughts on taking that?
I don't have anything to say directly to those statistics. I've been thinking, as we've all been talking up here, part of me is wondering, what do you guys want to hear, right? what I want you to walk away with is mentoring young female athletes, mentoring assistant coaches that you have. If you're in a position where you can hire women to be in leadership roles, look at that seriously, because there's this new commercial I just saw last night. It was so impactful. I don't remember what the company was. I think it was Chrysler. So it was so impactful that I didn't even watch what the company was. It's the one where Missy Franklin is breaking the American record. And it's to be her, you need to see her. That's the motto. You never see her swim. The screen is black, except for words, and they're talking about how we don't see women doing amazing things enough. And I think as people who have positions where they can have more women on their staffs, especially in leadership roles, that's something that I want more people, and it's generally men, which is the dominant gender in this room, to take on more of that responsibility of giving women a chance. I look out here at Steve Boltman. Steve Boltman always hires, well, I don't know if that's true, what I know of, strong young women to be part of his staff who he mentors and then sends on to lead their own programs or go on to other programs where they can have leadership roles. And I think that's something that's really, really important, is the people who are in positions of power to promote women to be leaders in their own right. And that's what I would want people to walk away from this conversation with. We can talk about a lot of other things, but to me that would be the most important, because I think, just like Abby said, she always swam for men. She was excited to have a female role model in her swimming career. She did just fine without Carol for those first 2 years, it sounds like, but she wanted that. And I think there are a lot of female athletes that do, even though they've never experienced it. And I think that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think it's interesting looking out within my career for the opportunities, because I've been really specific on what I've been looking for. I've gotten approached for club jobs, college jobs, different NGB jobs, but for me I've had all these great opportunities, I think, because I've had that ability to see mentors and other women in those roles. And so what I've been thinking about as they were both talking was, what happens to the women that aren't exposed to a really high-end role model, someone who's made an Olympic staff as a female coach? How do they know, and how are they motivated to know that they could become that? And I'm sure, Kim, coming from you're not swimming necessarily at a high level, what was your moment then from saying, I want to go from where I was swimming to then being on an Olympic staff? Because that's a huge jump.
This was going to be one of my turning point moments, but I was in graduate school. I wanted to be a sports psychologist. And so I went to graduate school. I was at Springfield College and finished my master's. And while I was in graduate school, I realized that I was a little bit behind my peers because they had all had jobs before. I came right out of college. And so I thought, well, before I go on for my doctorate, I have to have some work experience. And I decided I was going to coach swimming because I had done a little bit of coaching in graduate school. But I went to the Stanford swim camp, and so fortunate I got to work with Richard Quick especially, but also Skip Kenny, and watching, this is in 1991 and 92, and watching their athletes prepare for Olympic trials and the Olympic Games, a switch turned, and I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. And Richard, I think, saw something in me. For those of you that know me, I'm a pretty enthusiastic person. I put a lot of energy out there. I'm a big extrovert. And I think Richard saw that and thought, you can turn this into something big. So that really got me more into wanting to follow the track of coaching for a little while. And then once I went to Auburn, I was like, there's no going back to school. This is really fun. I like coaching this level of athlete. But there was a lot of level of intimidation. Like, who am I to tell, I don't even know, not even like a big time, not even like a Maggie Bowen or Kirsty Coventry, but somebody who doesn't even aspire necessarily to win an Olympic medal or a world championship medal. I wasn't a great swimmer. Who am I to tell anybody what to do? So overcoming that kind of that lack of confidence in myself took a lot of time and mentorship, even making recruiting calls. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not going to know who I am. Well, I recognize later, I can be who I am now, and they still might not know who I am, right? Have the accolades that I do have. So, yeah, that was my kind of turning point. But I've had a lot of self-doubt along that journey of, am I capable of doing this? And part of it was not seeing people to emulate.
Oh, you want to say something?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay, you go.
And yeah, that's where I feel like my turning point was, similar to Kim's. I mean, I swam at an elite level, and so I'm a very driven person, and I have very lofty goals. I did for swimming, and I do for my own personal coaching career. And so always being around people that kind of carry that same weight, it's been interesting for me to just find friends and kind of transition out of the sport from a personal perspective. But I feel very blessed with the fact that I had mentors and women to look up to through my own career, to be able to emulate and say that's kind of what I want to be when I grow up. It's always like the quote unquote, like, when I grow up, and it's gotten to the point of like, I think you have grown up. But even then I still call my mom, when I get offered different speaking gigs or just different things, and she's my biggest cheerleader, so it's really exciting. Your mom's always going to be like, yeah, I knew you could do it, honey. And I'm like, thank you. So yeah, but for me, the other flip side of that is, I think it was easier for me to see where I wanted to go because I had these mentors. And then one of the next pieces to that equation is realizing that now that I'm in it, there's a very strong network of female coaches. But once again, you kind of have to get into coaching, and then you have to be more on the higher level of female coaching to be able to get into some of these like networks of women coaches. So you take that 50% and then you take it down to 20%, and then you take the top 5% of that 20%, and then they're like in their own little cohort, I think they call themselves. But there's different groups of women that are very high up in coaching that are networked with each other, which is really cool when you're a part of one of them. But how do we get that 50% to 20% to 5% to be there?
First, because that, like, it's perfect for, yeah, thanks. So I have two stories which could, and one is about this one right here. So my first story is being at Olympic trials the first time as a head coach, and it was really heartening because the number of females on the pool deck, there's usually like 300 coaches at trials, and the number was larger than it had been the year before. And during the course of, a 7-day visit, I was asked, now I had a new team, so no one ever heard of us, probably still no one's ever heard of us, but I was asked 18 times in 7 days, because everyone at trials is very friendly. It's kind of like, I guess, the smaller the meet, the more everybody knows each other. And 18 times people said, oh, whose assistant are you? And it was an innocent, and it was kind, and it was people trying to be inclusive and welcome me to this environment. But it was kind of fun for me to say, well, I'm not an assistant, I own my own team. But 18 times in 7 days. But that feeling that Kim was talking about, and then leads what you were talking about, of, okay, well, all these people think I'm an assistant. Do I really belong? Like, do I know what I'm doing? Well, yes, I got athletes to trials. But you tell yourself these things, but you're never sure because of this whole you need to see it thing that you were talking about. So I don't remember, you won't remember this, one Worlds, I don't remember what it was, but it was my first time at Worlds with an athlete that I had developed, and I think I was with Team Kenya as a first time, like, on a staff. And Kim was, she is I'm not trying to age you, but she's a generation that went ahead of me that I got to look at and go, wow, I want to be like them, and I want to have a cohort, and I want to have, and she did not know me, but you recognized another, I guess, female coach, and came running up to me, and you were just, you don't probably remember this, you were being silly. We were in a stairwell, and you were making a video about Kiersey Coventry, I think, like some sort of world's, I don't know what she was doing, ask her, but she said, oh, what do you have to say? And she asked me some questions and made me feel like it really mattered what I had to say, which no one really cared what I had to say, but the fact that you did that made a huge impact, and that was a decade ago, and I still think about that, so thank you for that. But just taking time, the lesson for me there is taking time to not make an assumption about a coach you don't know their story, and then also taking the time, especially with females, to just recognize their efforts and make them feel heard, and I think, to me, that has made all the difference. Abby, I have a story about you. Abby is talking about these cohorts. So what Kim, and you can talk to this better than I, but there was a group of NCAA coaches that, female coaches, that decided that they were going to support each other and share information, and that was, you were the young one in that group.
Nope.
No?
Was never.
Wasn't that you?
Part of it.
Okay, so there we go. So as a result of some people being in that group and some people not being in that group, lots of little friend groups have sort of been created. And like 4 years ago at Nationals, we had this, USA Swimming tries to support this effort, and so they had a female coaches luncheon, you were there, and talking about, well, I want a cohort too. And so I think what we were challenged with at the time is go out and create your own groups, and because somehow with our, I guess, male counterparts, it's really easy because everyone's at the bar and everybody can kind of relate pretty easily. And we do that too, we can do that too, but somehow females need maybe a more organized or formal meet and greet situation. So I think just having, like, you made a cohort with me and you didn't even know it, and you were like, who's that new coach, what is she doing? But you created, then I felt comfortable coming to you whether you liked it or not, and always had a person to smile, and always had, like, if I was feeling like, what the hell am I doing here at World Championship, you know, and to be there and just to model what's possible. So I think, further to what Kim said, you know, giving female coaches, young female coaches in particular, opportunities to grow and shine, but also offering a little cohort of your own wherever you can. And I think that's another way forward, because there are so many amazing coaches that just didn't get lucky enough to get a good mentor, or didn't get lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, that we're missing the boat on. So even though we've got that 52%, so many are just languishing somewhere in obscurity that no one is recognizing their amazing efforts.
That cohort, they're called summits, I think, right?
I thought you were in that one.
Yeah. No, I asked to be in the summit, and I was told there wasn't room. Because you do need them to be small, right? You don't want to have 20 people in a summit, so they need to be small. But I would tell you, like, that still stings me, that my female coaching peers, there weren't many of us, they're all Division I coaches. I was really stung by that, and probably put a little chip on my shoulder, I guess, to be honest. But what it did do is it encouraged me to reach out to other people, which is what Kathleen is talking about. And I think it's great now how USA Swimming is encouraging different summits. And what I do with young women that I work with is I really encourage them to create their own, even in high school, like in their little high school teams. Like, have a group of you that if you want to get together and talk and figure out how you can make things better for yourself or for your team, or share, you know, a lot of it is experiencing shared hardships, right? Like, you know, I would be complaining to Kathy Wickstrand, you know, mentors a lot of people, and I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. And she's like, oh, Terry just had that problem. I'm like, what? Terry McKeever has that problem, you know? So it almost makes you feel a little bit better when you know other people are having the same issues as you. And I think that's part of what those summits do. You share the good and the bad together, and you can bounce ideas off of people. So I'm always encouraging young women to get involved with those. I love, Dave Deniston just did this. He had his assistant reach out to me at Wyoming. Hey, Kim she was a mentor for me when I was in college. She's one of my college coaches. She's a great female coach. You should reach out to her. And I never say no. if somebody writes me or calls me, I never say, I at least have one conversation and try to give some sort of feedback or inspiration or whatever I can do. I don't have all the answers though, so I'm always also saying, just go find a group, go ask. You have to be proactive. So for the women out here or the men who are mentoring young women, they have to be proactive. You can't just sit and wait for something to come to you. You got to go out and ask questions and be curious and, take advantage of opportunities.
I actually had a question. Obviously, we've been through rejection, right, in multiple occasions. So where and what was the turning point for USA Swimming to support women in all those summits?
I can talk to this. I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but I'll be the spokesperson. The first Women's Leadership Summit was 2014, and it was, I was lucky enough to be there for that, and some of the best friends I have in the sport were from that. It was a little touchy-feely, which they've gotten a lot better at over the years. It was very much into your feelings, which I don't love. We're here to coach. We don't need to be in our feelings. But beyond that, some of my closest female colleague friends I made in 2014 at that thing. So I believe that was the first time it was formally put together. Before that, I know at USA Swimming Convention, I love and hate this story. At USA Swimming Convention in particular, there was a group of, and sort of an informal, those of you who remember Dave Thomas, I think it was his idea, putting this female coaches group together. So that was a great first step. Unfortunately, they would often have the female coaches group in the middle of the coaches meeting, so everyone else was in the giant ballroom, and then so you had to choose. Did you want to be a part of this female coaching community, or did you want to sit and listen to people talk about what happened at the Olympics and where our sport is going? So so it has evolved. So the intention has been there, I feel like, for a long time, but it's gotten a lot better over the years in terms of providing formal opportunities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I do feel like kind of bouncing on recognizing that there are more opportunities for females in coaching. Something I was talking about with Solomon yesterday and the coaches from Ashland was a guy named Alex Braunfeld, who, raise your hand if you know Alex, just because I think I hope Alex watches this. So Alex was basically the interim coach while Carol went over to Singapore while I was at UGA. I had never met Alex prior to my time at Georgia, and still to this day, I would say Alex still pesters me. But he was a great coach. He really was very direct with his feedback, and I responded well to not a lot of fluff, not a lot of feelings, like kind of get in and do the work. But now I recognize that sometimes you need the space for both of those things to coexist, and that's okay. But what's been really interesting is realizing through the transition of Alex to Carol, how both of those coaches have their own sets of pros and then their own sets of cons, and it's not necessarily like I need the female in front of me to perform, or I need the male, but sometimes I need the both. And so with being a younger coach, I feel like I talk a lot about coaching with people that are just getting into college coaching, and so they're like the lowest level assistant on a 5-person staff, doing a lot of logistics, ordering meals, maybe running a practice once a week, but kind of more so taking the back seat to learn. I do believe that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should do more time listening than you should really be speaking. And I think that there's a balance of how much do you do that, and then at the same token, how much do you put your foot in the pool to find that next opportunity, create that next opportunity, so you have the ability to have the next step. But the reason I brought up Alex is I think it's really interesting because I started coaching, and the biggest question I had was, well, what if I want to have a family? How am I going to do this in 20 years? How am I going to have kids? How am I going to balance that with the coaching grind? I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I'm going to be married to probably a coach because they would understand the lifestyle, kind of do what Carol did, but at the same token, I was like, if I pigeonhole myself into this, what am I going to pivot out of? And so I do know that there's a lot more coaches that are kind of going and doing stints to help women, whether they are on maternity leave or maybe they're taking time off, which I think is really interesting because I know that like Alex loves to just go to Monaco for a few weeks and do some exciting things, and I quite frankly would love to do that too. But I think it helps women understand that there are abilities to be in this sport with some support if they are pursuing other parts of their lives as well. Did you have something? I heard a large gasp.
Another question. I still think about the percentage that you brought up, and how do we make those 20% higher, given that visibility of Olympic sports is high just during the Olympic year, or during the Olympics, not even the year, and given that women do apply for those jobs, but sometimes they are not even interviewed, they're not even called back. How do we become more visible? How do we get the interviews?
But do women apply? Do they?
Yes.
So I think that's another question. We were talking at dinner last night about some study that, and I'm going to quote a bad percentage now because I can't remember the exact number, but when they were looking at gender differences, nothing to do with swimming, just in life, in hiring for jobs. And it was some employment HR study, and men will apply for any job that looks interesting, basically. If it looks interesting, I could do it, I'll do it. Women will not apply unless they reach something like 90% or more of all of the qualifications listed. And so I think, I don't know the answer, but I wanted to just point out that I don't know if it's that women aren't getting picked for jobs, but are women even applying for the jobs? But then go a little deeper than that. Why not? And if we want to see more women, we can't just count on two hands the women that we see at World Championships and Olympics and trials and ISL. And we need to see more. And I think that starts with bringing that, expanding the size of that pipeline of women that are qualified. We also talked about, it's sort of the unwritten or unseen thing in the room, or elephant in the room, whatever, that, we don't just want to check a box and put somebody into a job because they are a certain gender or a certain color or a certain, we want to put qualified people in. So I think it's incumbent upon the female coaches in our sport now that are in leadership roles, and also all of the allies that are out there, to make qualified coaches. I don't really care if you're a woman or a man or whatever you are. If you're good, you should get the job. If you're bad, you shouldn't get the job. So I think are enough women applying, but even more than that, are enough qualified people applying, or people maybe in some cases giving jobs to people they know. That could be. But I don't think women aren't getting jobs. I think women aren't applying for jobs. That's how I feel.
I think that women do, maybe not as, if there is a position and 100 male coaches apply, maybe 20 female coaches apply, for those reasons, because, some people feel, yes, of course I'll apply, and female coaches may feel, well, I'm not sure if I'm ready, if I'm qualified. So I think they do apply. They do have additional responsibilities the society traditionally has put on, just like Abby mentioned, family and children, and that could complicate things for women. In some situations, it could complicate things for men, depending on how, the dynamics at home work out. But again, I think that the applicants are there, and perhaps they're quite qualified.
I want to bring up, most of you probably remember the uproar when Margot Geer was hired as the head coach at the University of Alabama this year. And even there were a lot of women that were taken aback by that because she hadn't ever even been a head coach anywhere. She was the volunteer assistant while still training to make the 2021 team. And when Coley Stickles was no longer the head coach, she was promoted as the interim head coach and, got the job. It was interesting for me because one of the assistants there was a guy who I really believed in, Ozzy Quevedo, and he had been there for years, a lot of experience, and I think would have made a great head coach. But there was a part of me that was like, yeah, why not give Margot a chance, And now in hindsight, looking back at how Alabama performed, she did a pretty damn good job. And I think one of the things now looking back, I think somebody gave her a chance. Somebody believed in her. It was somebody who knew her. He had been the athletic director at Arizona when she was swimming there, so he knew her and believed in her. But I think one of the things Margot did really well was she hired people that could help support her vision. She kept Ozzy on. And she had people who could help her be a great head coach of a combined SEC team. I mean, that's big time, right? I remember when I was at Texas in, I guess 2009, and Richard Quick had passed away, and they were looking for the new person who would take over for Auburn. Jay Jacobs, their athletic director, was at NCAA's, and he said to me, Kim, now who do you think would be good applicants? Very Southern. And part of me was like, why wouldn't you even consider me? I was at Auburn for 8 years. I helped win 7 national championships there. I'm coaching at the University of Texas. Never even crossed his mind that I might be an adequate applicant. Now, I was very happy at Texas. I also didn't say, hey, I'd like to apply for this job. But, he's asking me, who should I consider? And I found that really interesting. So I'm really happy for Margot, and I hope that more athletic directors take risks like that. I really do. And there will be some failures along the way, just like there are with men, right? There are some guys who get jobs and don't do a great job. But I really hope that there's a little more risk-taking with some of the talented women who are out there coaching.
Should we take questions?
Do you have a question, Kyle?
Yeah, I actually do. So our athletic department is mostly men in general. And I have a young lady who wants to get into coaching, and I am pushing her to, follow that. Sure. Yeah, you got it. And, hello?
Flip the thing up.
I think, there we go. What can we do as men's coaching, to help? With comfort in getting into that, so they don't feel some self-doubt or things like that, and kind of encourage more.
Are you asking to get her the job, or once she gets the job?
She's a swimmer.
Oh, she's
And
a
I'm trying to
swimmer.
just encourage her to follow this and make sure that she keeps doing that and really feels comfortable in coaching in general.
We have 25 women we see every day
Mhm.
on a pool deck.
Yeah.
We have this opportunity.
Go ahead.
I think I understand. So you're basically saying you have all these women in a pool in front of you, and potentially they could come and become great coaches. So what can you do from a coaching perspective to give them the other side of the sport? And I felt like that's, for me, I stayed at UGA for an extra 2 years and went to grad school. And that's really where I got the experience of seeing the other side of the sport. Because when I was an athlete, I had one experience, and then I was going to staff meetings and seeing how our staff interpersonally actually worked and who did what, and how everything kind of came together. And that to me was really interesting, going from the wet to the dry, but within the same program. And then also a program that's very, very dominant, has created a ton of Olympians. So one thing that I've always kind of kept with Jack and I's relationship is questions. He's always made it very an open environment for me to come and talk to him when I was a volunteer coach. He made sure that I was welcome to come to any practice, like every day of the week, any morning. And so it was more so up to me to decide what fit with my schedule. But even during sets, he would explain, what he was thinking, what he was looking for. And one of my favorite memories of Jack, we used to have this kind of sketchy like heart rate monitor, and it was like this thing he dropped down and you'd like put it right here and it would give him a number, and so he'd always guess what the number was, which I didn't know when I was swimming, and then measure a swimmer's heart rate, and he would tell you, and then he'd see how close he was. Well, he got so good at it that he got rid of the sketchy Canadian thing, and he would look at his swimmers as they were getting out for certain sets and be like 146, 153, 161, just based off of what they looked like, which is wild because I really like numbers and I really like data. And so when I've gone overseas and worked with other coaches, they're in the weeds writing down all the numbers, or like got all the gadgets, they're poking swimmers, and it's this whole thing. It's a totally different environment, it's a totally different feel, but I really appreciate how Jack would always take the time to be like, Abby, this is actually what I'm doing, so I'm not just standing there kind of, taking up my own space with a bunch of questions and not wanting to be like, hey, Jack, what's happening? So, yeah.
I have a thing that we've had a few Navy SEALs come and talk to our athletes over the years, and they have a thing they call confidence and competence, and it's what they say when they go out on a dangerous mission. And it has resonated with me to the point where I use it all the time, usually during taper, but I think that can be a tool for your female athletes to become great coaches, because once you have the competence, it sort of gives you the confidence that you know what you're doing. So in terms of encouraging them, we all probably agree that there's no substitute for time on deck. You can't learn from a book everything you need to know about being a great coach. You have to live it. You have to fail. You have to have some success. You have to get that bug, and that will come with time. So you can't teach them everything they need to know, but you can instill some confidence from your own coaching style, and like, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing this set, here's what I think it's going to do for you, because that knowledge will give them the confidence later to become very competent at their jobs.
And if I could add, having the conversation with that swimmer or with all your girls, to encourage them to get involved in coaching at any level that they feel comfortable, because they will make a difference in other girls' lives. That's for sure. Encouraging them to find their tribe, their support, which is what all women here have done and actively searched for. Perhaps giving them the opportunity to kind of step in that role of the coach while they are still on the team, perhaps after the season is over, but kind of stepping and having that experience of what it is. Maybe, I don't know, shadow you for a day, or maybe even create a practice or whatnot, to have that experience, and that could really fire them up even more. And kind of start spreading their wings a little bit.
I think lastly, I would say, see her. Like, bring somebody in. Bring in a coach who, isn't on your staff, that your women can just ask questions of, and see that there are people out there that are doing the things that they might want to do.
Even from a different sport, and you were in the college team, campus, so yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Solomon.
Hey, John.
Yeah, so not a question, just something I thought might be helpful for the group and my limited experience. For those of you that don't know me, I coach Stewart Tsunami Swim Club. We just had a pretty standout performer at the Olympics, Lydia Jacoby. One of the things I did, just kind of thinking about like checking under the hood, sports psychology, and it doesn't have to be specific to a woman, but with her, I knew there were going to be dark, tough days ahead, dog days, if you will. So while we're on maybe a higher point of training, I made it a point to have a kind of sit down with her and encourage her to write a list, or even just mentally tabulate a list of the reasons why she should be confident So that way when things really got tough, she could visit that and just kind of buoy her confidence and remind herself that she is competent, she is where she needs to be, and she's on her way.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and I think having your goals in the foresight of your mind, if that's the type of person that you are, and also have people to remind you if maybe that's, it does get hard to remember, I think for everyone, if it's a tough day, is really important for confidence. But, I do think what everybody has said here as far as helping younger female coaches from a mentor perspective, giving them the space, maybe the opportunity, acknowledgement that other women are out there, whether it just be in the sport of swimming or in other sports, are just great ways for other women to see women doing their thing. And I do think that females have a tendency to talk a lot. Like, there is a lot of talking that has to happen sometimes to get things done. But one of my favorite coaches is Stephanie Marino at UGA, and I was still there when Steph was hired, and so I kind of got to see. I mean, Stephanie is a phenomenal swimmer. I think she was a 21 or 22-time All-American for UGA, and she was coaching at Ohio State, and she was also somewhere else. But it was interesting to see kind of her embody what it's like to be a coach at the University of Georgia, especially after coming in through Carol's heels, because Carol had just left to go to Texas, and to understand that even she, who I felt like had made it, had those moments of doubt and didn't know if this was the right thing for her. And I remember when Jack started giving her the opportunity to write practices, she'd be like, what do you think about this? I'm like, what do you care about what I think about this? Like, let's look at the food chain here. Like, I'm down here. And ironically, last quad, when I was videotaping before 2016 for Jack, he, put me with Stephanie, and I was working with some of the breaststrokers. And Steph was like, I filmed, and I gave Steph the film, and Steph was like, no. You do this. Like, you talk to these swimmers. Like, this is your thing. You're the expert in this. And I was kind of like, thanks. So the tables have turned, but just being able to watch her, and once again, that kind of goes back to what I originally said, has really helped me gain the confidence for, what I want to be, quote unquote.
Can I say one more thing? John is like giving us a signal to wrap up, but I want to say one more thing. Talk about turning points, but I don't know if you guys had the same experience. I think you did, because you just talked about it. This is not gender specific, where you look up to people, and all of a sudden somebody cares about what you have to say, and you're like, wait, when did that happen? I'm here going to all these clinics and asking all these questions, and so I think it's the knowledge or the realization that you never stop learning. It has nothing to do with you don't ever arrive. You just keep expanding your circle of friends and your circle of knowledge. And I think that maybe sometimes women feel, oh, I have too much to learn, I have so much to learn, but we're all learning every day, and we make mistakes every day. So I don't know, I think that when you realize that, okay, I'm still learning, but I can also offer some things too, is a pretty cool turning point for people.
I say one thing, or actually 10 things. My career started back in 1959, and I fully realized even back then what stress women were under in terms of leadership roles in the country. And so I've sort of followed it all the way through my career. And in many ways, you're very lucky today. You have role models, you have wonderful CEOs in major corporations now, and so forth and so on, to look up to. 4 of our great coaches from back in the day, Mary Kelly, who is probably, in my mind, one of the top 10 coaches in the United States of all time. Penny Taylor, and Penny Taylor had to leave her husband in order to continue coaching. Frankie Bell, down in North Carolina, was producing male swimmers to the top level of the sport. And Claudia Kolb, who had a very short but very impactful time in her short period there on the national level. And she had a choice. Do I stay married or do I coach? And I'm hopeful that that is no longer the case. And anyway, I applaud all of you for being here and doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I think this is a different talk, so I'm not going to, but our coaching profession in general requires a lot of people to make choices between their marriages and their coaching, or between having kids and coaching. And I don't know what the answer is, but I feel like there needs to be a better way, because we lose good people because of that. And I appreciate that, and I don't think we mentioned it enough in our talk, that we're only here because of the people that really went before us, Maureen included, and gives us the courage and the right to be up here, so I'm grateful. I do want to say, though, that all of us here also coach men, so female coaches do not have to just coach female athletes. Female coaches can coach men and women, and male coaches can also coach men and women. Just my little plug.